Hey everybody, this is Ken. I was pretty excited when Marianne asked me if I'd like to do a little guest lecture for you guys when she and I met at Midwinter. So I've tried to give you a little overview of how I use digital books in my programs and my story times. I had a lot of fun putting this together, so I hope it's interesting and educational for you. So now I present myself.
My name is Cen Campbell. I run a blog called littleelit.com where we develop programs and best practices for incorporating digital media into early literacy programming. Often when children's librarians use mobile media in their story times, they start with digital books. There are myriad formats of digital books for kids, and kids media is still the fastest growing portion of the app development and publishing industries.
So that's me in my little office, my telegami office. So, digital books. I realized recently that despite the fact that I'm a staunch advocate for children's librarians getting a little jiggier with what parents and kids are actually consuming on their iPads and smartphones, I'm still pretty old school with how I run my story times. And what I mean by that is that I still use predominantly book-based apps, and I turn the sound off and I turn the animation off if I can, because I want to maintain the connection between the storyteller and the book, even if the book happens to be projected onto a screen or a TV. And I'll use a digital felt board as well, and I'll use it pretty much the same way I would use a physical felt board. On Little eLit, I like to profile other library systems that are also using apps in Storytime, and some of them are really putting me to shame with the creativity by which they're incorporating apps into their literacy programs. Paige Bentley Flannery at the Deschutes Public Library uses the Fancy Nancy Ballerina app, and she'll project the app onto the wall, and she'll have videos of the kids dancing right next to Fancy Nancy, which is what you can do with the app. She does all sorts of fun stuff with apps and kids. Anne Hicks at the Henrietta Library also uses lots of different types of apps. She does animal sounds and all sorts of stuff that she records for us on Little eLit as well. My approach, however, lends itself a little better to traditional storytelling structures like Every Child Ready to Read and Mother Goose on the Loose, and that often makes the whole using digital books in early literacy programming a little more palatable for children's librarians who are still unsure about why we need to start doing this regularly as a profession. So my first foray into using digital media in story times was through Tablet Tales. Now this was the pilot project that I ran through the Santa Clara County Library District, and what I did was I took a preschool story time and I added digital elements, and I took it around to all the different community libraries and I did demonstrations. Now this was partially as a public program, and it was also to serve as a staff training exercise because, again, some children's librarians still don't buy into why using apps and ebooks with young kids in libraries is now a necessary part of our profession. So why? Why do we need to start using digital books in story times? Well, I'll tell you. Aside from the fact that you can make a very small book very big by projecting it onto a big screen, there are two main reasons why we should be using digital books in Storytime. The first is appvisory, and that's a word that we've kind of coined at Little eLit. It's reader's advisory for apps. The second fancy term here is joint media engagement. That's where caregivers and kids consume media together. And I'll have a separate slide for both of those reasons for why we're doing this now, but I wanted to show you, give you some appvisory. Here are two of my favorite books to use in Storytime. There's How Rocket Learned to Read, and that's an app, and it's wonderful to use in Storytime. And also Olivia, which is not an app, it's an iBook. And what's really excellent about Olivia is that it's narrated by Dame Edna. And if you're not aware of who Dame Edna is, I will introduce you right now. Here she is, everybody. That's Dame Edna. Now, whoever chose her to narrate this iBook was brilliant. If there's a human alive who embodies Olivia's chutzpah, it's Dame Edna. There are a lot of not so good narrations in apps and ebooks out there, And, if a librarian makes a point of recommending a digital version of a Caldecott honor book that is superbly narrated by a British transvestite, you can be damn sure that the parents are going to listen to that recommendation. And in Storytime, we have a captive audience to show parents where the high quality digital books are. Do you want them downloading Nickelodeon's watered down version of Olivia for their kid's iPad, or do you want them to be looking at Ian Falconer's version of Olivia, which happens to be narrated by this lovely creature here? I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? So, Appvisory, that's what we're talking about here. There'll be more talk about Appvisory, Reader's Advisory for apps, as more iPads and tablets make their way onto library shelves. The app space for kids is huge. It's overwhelming, and it's filled mostly with junk. Where a lot of parents get recommendations from right now is from marketers. That's what you get if you're browsing in the App Store or looking at Facebook ads, or even from quote recommendation sites like Smart Apps for Kids. Even mommy bloggers are paid for the reviews that they put up. So there is hope, though. We're working on a librarian curated Appvisory initiative with Carissa Kluver from Digital Storytime. You see her little logo there. She was reviewing book-based apps before School Library Journal was. The tool we're building is called librarianapproved.com, which doesn't exist yet because I just bought the domain, but it's going to be a librarian curated recommendation database. So it's going to be like a combination of A to Zoo, the Read Aloud Handbook, Goodreads, Novelist, and Kindertown. There's another app recommendation website here. So we're hoping to put that together and get children's librarians really involved in curating and evaluating the app space for kids, because we are the profession that should be doing this. Now there are review sites like Kirkus, School Library Journal, and Hornbook, which were some of our standbys for print materials. They're reviewing apps now too. And what we need is a single resource where you can see all of those reviews. So that's what we're trying to build. So the second main reason for why we should be incorporating digital books into Storytimes is joint media engagement. Now that's a very fancy term that's bandied around a lot by research organizations like the Joan Gantz Cooney Center, and it's a real breakthrough concept. A parent and a child sit down together and they pay attention to the same thing. Wait a second, that's what they've been doing for centuries when they sit down and read a book. We need a fancy term for that now, though, because parental expectations are not as clear as they used to be now that interactive media is so pervasive. A paper book won't read itself to a child, and no parent would assume that it would, but a Dr. Seuss book app just might. So does that mean that the app should read to the child all the time? Are parents off the hook? Well, no. Read me an app, mommy, it's an invitation for cuddling and sharing a story session together just as much as reading a book is. And we have to tell parents that they can do that. It's almost like we need to give them permission and give them some tools for how to use the iPad in the same way that they would use a book. Now, we have the opportunity to show parents that what matters when they're consuming books on an iPad is not the format, we have the opportunity to show parents that when consuming books with their child, it's not the format that matters. It doesn't matter if it's a board book or a paper book or an app or a cloth book. It's that the parent and the child are reading the book together and they're engaging in literacy supporting activities like dialogic reading, and they're taking a picture walk and they're asking open-ended questions, all the other things that we tell them they can do in Storytimes. So there are times when the iPad will be used as a babysitter, and no amount of children's librarians idealizing the beauty and simplicity and the smell of the paper book will change that. These devices will be used as a babysitter for short periods of time, but at least what we can do is let parents know what good quality media looks like, where they can find it, and how they can share it with their child. I'm doing some workshops on Every Child Ready to Read too, because it's a perfect vehicle by which we can model this kind of positive media behavior for kids and parents. So another great reason to use an iPad in Storytime is that you can provide a resource slide of everything you used in your story time, which is kind of like what I've done for you guys here. So these are the review sources, the apps, and the program that I told you about. There's a lot more recommendations like this on littleelit.com, so please come and visit us. It's we're trying to create a community of knowledge. So please feel free to come and visit us anytime. Thanks for listening today. If any of you are using apps and ebooks in your story times already, or you're doing other programs in your libraries or library type situations, please let me know. I'd love to feature you on littleelit.com, because we do need to be sharing our experiences, because this is brand spanking new and we have an opportunity to make great strides in this area, but we need to share our knowledge to do that. So finally, if you have any ideas for collaboration or grant-based projects, or you need to do a professional experience project, please give me a shout and I'll see what I can do to help. I'm really big into partnership and collaboration, and you guys have a great opportunity to make some strides in our field. So thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.